is the Basketball Hall of Fame watered down? Because the class came out, and that's just the talk every year. Nobody's ever going to be satisfied with the Hall of Fame, right? But looking at this class, I think there's just people sometimes who aren't really familiar with their resume, and the Hall of Fame just also has different criteria for different people right now. I'm not saying it's not watered down. I'm not saying it is, but we can kind of go through it. First of all, quick congratulations to Simone Augustus. I'm not one of those people who's going to pretend I've been watching women's basketball my whole life. I'm new to it. I'm open to it. I'm doing my research. I'm getting around to watching the old games. This thing right here is a lot of work, so I'm trying to find the time to do that. But congratulations to her. You know what I mean? Michael Cooper, we talked about him on an earlier episode. The defensive anchor on those Showtime Laker teams, his importance to that team can't be overstated. Just doing all the dirty work, guarding other team's best players and starting those fast breaks for that historic team, everything like that, right? Vince Carter, I don't know why anybody was questioning his induction. Yeah. Somebody who literally saved the franchise. If you don't know, Toronto Raptors and Vancouver Grizzlies came into the league both at the same time in 1995. Toronto Raptors drafted Damon Stoudemire, great young point guard at the time, but wasn't enough to really move the needle for the league. Vince Carter comes in. Well, actually, the Raptors trade for him on draft night and the Anton Jameson trade. Lockout season. He comes in halfway through. Some of the craziest highlights you've seen in your life. Just kind of takes over the culture of basketball for a brief stint. Gets the world familiar with the Toronto Raptors, with Toronto. Just doing things in the community, kind of building up. I understand Drake gets a lot of credit for putting Toronto on a map. He's the second person to do that. Mm-hmm. He did it for a generation. Vince Carter was first. And the fate of it ended up being the Toronto Raptors became this, I don't want to say household name because they don't get a whole bunch of credit, but they have a very, we know from social media, dedicated and large fan base that kind of carries them through. And that started with Vince Carter. And then the Vancouver Grizzlies ended up getting moved to Memphis because they just couldn't cut it in Canada. And so huge credit to him. Huge credit to Michael Cooper, Simone Augustus, Walter Davis, who I'm not going to get too deep into, but 1977 pick from the Phoenix Suns, leading scorer in that franchise, great career. What's Chauncey Billups doing there? Look, and I love Chauncey Billups. High IQ player, champion, but he wasn't that team star. Ben Wallace was. He wasn't their best player. Rasheed Wallace was. He held that team together in a sense, but so did Tayshaun Prince and really Larry Brown also. He was very consistent, but the guy you really think of for consistency on that team is Rip Hamilton. All due respect to Chauncey Billups, but I think that's where people's arguments have come from. But I've talked a whole bunch right now. I'm going to get y'all's thoughts on this Hall of Fame this Hall of Fame class. I don't know why I'm saying Doug G's.
I get the argument, Kenny, against Billups. 5-time All-Star, but he was 3 times All-NBA. That's more than Vince. That's more. He was a 2-time All-Defense. He's Finals MVP, champion. And you mentioned the guys on his team, Rip and Rasheed were really good players as well. Ben as well. Chauncey was the lead of that team, the lead snake of that team. Yeah, that he kind of got everybody going, everybody flowing, and he was kind of one of the. I won't say he's the first, but he was one of the in that era where it was kind of transitioning from the pass first point guard, John Stockton guy who's going for like 15 and 10. He was one of the first guys to go for like 18 and 6. Yeah, and ball movement, being an attacker, scorer. I remember I was terrified of him anytime he had the shot. So, they don't call him Mr. Big Shot for nothing. Just clutch, could score on all 3 levels. Hell of a post up player. The NBA is complicated because there's so much sacrifice that comes into playing on a great team with other talented players. We see in Miami, like Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh, I think, was a 1-time All NBA, if I'm not mistaken, and his numbers don't match up when you compare to other guys. But that's a lot of times because he's sacrificing his stats to play on a better team. And you put we've seen it before frequently. Guys will go lose Kobe loses Shaq and he goes from 25, 26 a game to 35. It's a different workload when you're you have less talent around you, and that's what makes it a little bit difficult. I can understand if you want to like put it just above Chauncey Billups, but he had a great run, and I feel like that 6-7 years span where he was a consistent all-star, 5 years in a row, consistent all-star, one of the clutchest players in the league, all defense, 2-time all defense, tough, can guard 1s and 2s, some 3s. When they played the Cavs, he would get the assignment with LeBron sometimes in the clutch. And he's was a deserving all-time great. I think he's better than some players that were in there for just NBA accomplishments. Namely Mitch Richmond. I feel like Mitch Richmond was the guy that once he made it, everybody else took a look at it, but even he's got a stronger case than some of these guys because he was 5-time All-NBA.
Yeah, I think Mitch Richmond took like 11 years to average less than 20 points or something like that. So yeah, he was incredible. And you know what? Let me just preface what I'm about to say with this isn't a debate show. Anybody who's been listening knows that this hasn't been a debate. So I'm gonna completely retract what I said. The guy who was talking 3 or 4 minutes ago was dumb as hell. Because Chauncey Billups, I just remember now. Well, I've been knew this, but Ben Wallace left that team and they were still dominant.
Yeah.
The LeBron that 25 in the fourth quarter, end of the game. That was against that team. And I watched that game. They were still extremely tough. And then Chauncey Billups got traded to Denver for Allen Iverson, undisputed Hall of Famer. Not the same Allen Iverson, but that Denver team was still very good behind Chauncey Billups. And the Pistons had to figure some stuff out. It was the end of an era. So I'll completely take back the shit I just said about Chauncey Billups just now. He's deserving. I was tripping. He's deserving. Lou, not just Chauncey Billups, what you have on the Hall of Fame in general.
It's always interesting because I feel like in the NBA Hall of Fame in particular, the bar is always moving. Like sometimes you look at some of the people who get in here like, what are we doing realistically? And it's just not, it's very inconsistent just in general. Like, no disrespect to Michael Cooper. He was an elite defensive player, but it's almost like, there's other defensive players who have been as elite, sometimes who just don't get this kind of recognition. I love that they're giving some recognition to defensive players. Right. I'll preface it with that. But, it's just like the consistency is kind of off. Honestly, I think it's too damn big. Yeah. When I think Hall of Fame, I think franchise altering. Like it should be that impactful. And some of the people who just get in year after year aren't really that franchise altering to just in general. So I wish the requirements were just a little bit more difficult to get into. Because I feel like just about anybody can get in terms of the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. I do think it's super, super cool that they give out, they classify it in different terms. They have the men's veteran and they have the international committee. And I think that's super cool because basketball is an international game. Obviously, we mostly focus on just the NBA, particularly the men's side. But, there's a lot more basketball being played around the world. So I do think that that's really cool that they include just everybody in general. But out of this list, man, it's a no doubt. Vince Carter was one of the most impactful players in basketball. During his stint while he was in the game, it was just one of the must-watch players of a generation, in a generation where he was in the league at the same time as his cousin T-Mac and Kobe and obviously Shaq. Just dominant superstars, and people would still hey, we got to go watch T-Mac because he was just that dominant of a player and also just a human highlight reel. Has the craziest highlights, the craziest in-game dunk I've ever seen in my life, and it wasn't even in an NBA game. Yeah, it was in an Olympic game. So it's just, shout out to all these guys, and shout out obviously to Simone Augustus as well. Congratulations to everybody, but I just wish it was just a little bit tougher to get into.
So what's crazy about Vince Carter, right? When you said craziest in-game dunk, I had like 4 different dunks coming to my mind, and none of them were the Olympic one. I thought about the lob he caught against the Clippers at the end of that game. I thought about some of his windmills just in general were crazy. I thought about the 2-hand reverse in Indiana. Crazy stuff, and a lot of that was like in his first 2-3 years. But Frankie, you had something more about on the Hall of Fame?
Oh yeah, man. I think I'm the only one that's been to the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, like I think we forget that basketball is still pretty new. That like until like Kobe died, like most of like the Hall of Famers were still alive. Like like it's very young in its age, and it's not the NBA Hall of Fame like Lou said. But you look at it and it's constantly growing, and how they characterize all this, and there's so many teams, so many players. Like I think they could definitely look at it, but they're I was going through the list right now of like all-time Hall of Famers, and like I'm like, oh, who's this guy? He's averaged 6 point a game. And I'm like, oh, okay, no, this guy was the first black player to play in college basketball. Okay, I didn't know this. So like you're constantly able to learn about guys like that, and I do kind of like that they include the defensive guys like that, like to showcase that you can be a Hall of Famer on one end, not just on offense. But like, man, the thing I care most about is make the Hall of Fame the actual place better. Because I was talking to you guys about it before the show, but I went the first time I went. I used to live in Springfield, Massachusetts. I still have a lot of family there. And my aunt literally lives like an exit away from the Basketball Hall of Fame. I went the first time, I think it was in 2002. I went again 11 years later in 2013 when I was staying at my aunt's house. It did not change. The names were different. There were new names, new additions. That's the only new additions to the thing. There was still a virtual reality simulator basketball game that was super timed out, like funky as hell. It couldn't read you as well. They had so much BS crap that it didn't feel like as like inspiring, like as like I was hoping for it to be. There was stuff, cool stuff. One of the little things that they have on the floor is they have like a bunch of basketball players' footprints on there, and like so you can compare your shoe size to them, and you step on Shaq's shoe size and you're like, fuck. How is that real? But I feel like we got to give it a little bit of grace just because it's so new, and I don't even think it's like I don't know how old it is, but I'm pretty sure it's not older than 100 years.
Yeah, I don't think so. Definitely not 100 years. Because the NBA is not even 100 years old.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The NBA is not even 100 years old. So like, yeah, and the Basketball Hall of Fame opened its door. The original Basketball Hall of Fame opened its doors to the public in 1968. Like,
yeah, so
you compare it to like the Baseball Hall of Fame, even football, like, it's just a lot different. I think over time, we'll be able to classify like more of these guys, because you look at, I'm looking at guys' stats here, and then I look at their resume, I look on their profile, and I'm like, I see Maurice Cheeks, and I know him as a coach, and I've heard of him as a player, but I look at his resume: 4-time All-Star, 5-time All-Defense, NBA champion, like incredible guys. But they're I think of it as a baseball fan as well, and there's like Lou said, there's definitely a difference in baseball between very good and Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And I don't know if we've been able to tell that yet.
Yeah. The problem with basketball is it's just, I feel like they do it every year, and they're trying to get guys in, get like a certain amount of people in. And so it's just like, I don't know how that works exactly. And so you end up with a guy or two who probably shouldn't be there just yet. Right. And I just don't know how they change it, because it's this whole event, this whole ordeal where they have these people talking for hours and all this stuff. It's like they kind of have to fill those gaps. But at the same time, because Football doesn't do that either. Football, like if you're a Hall of Famer and if you're an NFL Hall of Famer, you really put in that work on the field. So I don't know how they change it. I don't know how they change it.
Yeah, in baseball too. Like, probably one of the greatest players ever is not even a Hall of Famer due to a steroid ordeal.
Yeah.
So that's just like they generally just don't care. Like basketball is a lot easier to get into. I wish it was a little tougher because, like Frankie said, I think he put it best. That line between very good and Hall of Fame is a thin line, but it's a line that has been so far all inclusive in the NBA or in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And I wish they would, at least draw the line in the sand just a little bit clear.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of our faves might not be Hall of Famers in that regard. Like CB is probably not a Hall of Famer if we're just going elite. You might lose Mo Cheeks. You might, but it also becomes difficult because you're still balancing, since it's still new, you're still balancing like international players like Manu Ginobili. Wasn't a very great NBA player, of course, that didn't really have the accolades. 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA. Yeah. Like that's not a Hall of Fame resume, but when you include his international resume, that bumps him up. And then like some of these guys, like playing USA, it's so competitive. You might get one shot at it in your career, and you win gold, but you're not, Chris Bosh, great all-time great gold medalist as well. His resume internationally will never stack up to a Manu, even Luis Scola.
Yeah,
undoubtedly he's a better basketball player, but that international resume, just because of being an American, is different.
Yeah,
100%, man. I just another thing is they kind of like, we're at the age now where players are getting inducted who we grew up watching.
Yeah.
And so it's a little tough. I don't know if
we've watched like their whole career.
Yeah, like I remember when I first saw Amari Stoudemire retired, I was like, what? Because I remember when he was about to get drafted, and it was just like, you feel old every single time. There's also that clip floating around of Chris Paul's son playing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, I don't even want to get into that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Playoff Foul. First of all, subscribe, all that stuff. If you're still tuning into us, you enjoy it. So just go ahead, subscribe, like all that stuff. Today I got Frankie with me. Frankie, how you doing today?
Doing well. Marlins won. Yeah.
That's all we're going to talk about as far as Miami sports today.
Yeah.
Lou, how you doing today?
Terrible, because that's all we're going to talk about. Miami sports today.
And so the Hall of Fame, Michael Cooper's induction specifically got me thinking about players who entered the NBA with no real expectations, or not high expectations at least, and became stars. So I want to talk about a few of those players today, right? Guys who may have been role players in college, who may have just different things of that nature. There's some guys who we won't get into who were undrafted. Ben Wallace is another example. He was undrafted and became a Hall of Famer. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about those players who came into the NBA with no star expectations, but ended up becoming stars, and kind of give them credit for the work they put in, right?
Yeah.
First things first. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to it. We're going to take a more of a Americanized because of March Madness. We're going to be focusing on American players because, we get a lot of international players that are second round picks, not expect Nikola Jokic, the best, one of the best players in the league. Giannis, one of the best players in the league. That we had different expectations just because we didn't know a lot about them. We're still the scouts and teams are still learning how to scout them compared to American players.
Yeah. So first player, man, Devin Booker. And first things first, I want to give credit to Earl Watson. Now, he didn't make Devin Booker, but I feel like he kind of gets overlooked in the story of Devin Booker, being the head coach of that Suns team and deciding to let this young guy develop and give him the reins of the team and really put his job on the line.
Yep.
Earl Watson wasn't a bad coach, but he gave this young player, he saw the potential in Devin Booker and he gave him the reins. That may have been the same year Devin Booker ended up scoring 70. And allowing him to do that and play freely in that sense and just develop his game in the moment. So I want to give some credit to Earl Watson for that. But Devin Booker was a role player in college. He came off the bench for Kentucky. Lou, I'm going to go to you first because I know you're very familiar with how stacked that Kentucky team was.
Yeah, that Kentucky team was absolutely just ridiculous. Devin Booker obviously being the 13th pick. He didn't start in college. It was for a reason. They had the Harrison twins who both ended up being later on getting drafted to the NBA. Tyler Ulis, who was like the 5'9" point guard who at 5'9" made it to the NBA. That's impressive within itself. And then they had Willie Cauley-Stein, who was obviously a top 5 pick. Trey Lyles, who's still in the NBA to this day, and Karl Anthony Towns, who was the first overall pick in that draft. Like, that team was ridiculously stacked. So obviously, he was a role player, but dating back to his college days, he only averaged 10 points a game. But you can see that the shot was always there because he shot over 40% from 3. His free throw numbers were good. And then he comes into the NBA his first year and, like you said, goes to a really bad team. Let's call it how it is. And they start giving him the reins. And then obviously year 1, he starts to figure things out. But then year 2, they really all right, this is our guy. This is who we can claim maybe he's going to be our guy in the future. Let's see what he really does. And, Devin Booker hasn't looked back since year 2, if we're being very honest.
Right.
A lot of credit to Earl Watson for the first part of his career. A lot of credit to a player who I typically don't give a lot of credit to, and that is Chris Paul for the second stint of his career, because the playmaking chops that he has displayed now is something that was honestly almost a pipe dream when you watch him play at Kentucky, because he wasn't being asked to do any of that. He had essentially 3 point guards and Towns, who was, always not the best passing big, but in terms of college play, he was a very good passer just in general for his size. And so was Trey Lyles. So he wasn't really tasked to do any of that. And it's just seeing a player who came in with he was a 13th pick in the draft. We talk about where you get picked doesn't really matter, and it's true. But at some point, there's a lot of the questions with him was, can he be good enough defensively? If he is good enough offensively, how good can he be offensively? Is he going to be a star, or is he just going to be
microwave
a 6-man? Yeah, microwave scorer off the bench. Exactly. And, he has made a lot of teams look real dumb in that draft for passing up on lesser known players or players who just didn't pan out, and literally helped change. I don't want to say he solely did it, but he definitely helped change the outlook of the Phoenix Suns and what we know them as of this moment, as of today.
For sure. No, I was a fan of Devin Booker. That Kentucky team was so fun. Tyler Ulis and Devin off the bench was the better backcourt. Anybody who was watching could tell you this. The Harrison twins are so overrated. And no, he was so fun to watch because you could see flashes of it. But like Lou said, there's still question marks. He was 19 at the time. Only played 1 year in Kentucky, and how much is he's playing off talented guys? How much is it he's playing with with a solid coach in Calipari? You see he's got guys in front of him in the Harrison twins. Why are they starting over him if he's so good? And there's question marks all over. Yep. But he's definitely taken the reins just with his playmaking, his scoring, all-star talent. And he's one of the best shooting guards, if not the best, consistently year over year. It's especially since Harden and Clay have aged out a little bit. But he's just dominating and being able to recruit those top talent players like Chris Paul, a Kevin Durant, guys who want to play with him, and that's a big step for him as he gets into the prime of his career.
Yeah, and Devin Booker is one of those examples of why I don't like to put a ceiling on players, because like Lou said, the defense wasn't always there, and he's become one of the better defenders in the NBA now. The playmaking was definitely not there when he first got to the league, and now he's one of the better playmakers in the NBA. And again, we can give Chris Paul the credit for that. Well, the credit, but some
of it.
Some of it,
but not all.
When you learn from look, Chris Paul is a disliked player. Lou, you're one of the people who don't like Chris Paul very much.
Hater.
Still respect him.
Yes, but he is also one of the smartest players to ever play in the NBA.
Sure.
So anytime you're able to learn from somebody from that, it could be a great thing for you. And Devin Booker is an example of that. But I just want to give Devin Booker the credit also for those Suns teams were tough, right? And he was getting overlooked for All-Star games, and he did a little too much complaining about that, but
he did too much complaining altogether.
Yeah,
what was it he said in the double teaming and the scrimmages? Oh my God.
But now he has the playmaking to where if you double him, you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is he caught a lot of flack playing on those bad teams because and I don't like this, but anytime a player is good and they're not winning, all the blame goes on them, and it's they're not that good because they're not winning. And the whole ring culture thing we've been talking about since episode early on, it's kind of like poisonous. But Devin Booker caught a lot of heat for when those Suns teams weren't good, and it really wasn't his fault. Like sometimes you have to look at the front office, like, hey, I'm doing everything I can. You have to get me some people. So credit to him for sticking with it. I'm not gonna say he didn't complain because he complained a whole lot, but he stuck with the Suns. They ended up getting them some help, and now we can look at them this year and say they've underachieved, but they've also been very injured. We know how talented that team actually is.
Nobody wants to play him.
Nobody wants to play him. Bradley Beal just went off today.
Yeah.
So credit to Devin Booker, man. Bam Adebayo. Now, we have very close experience with this, us being from Miami, being Miami Heat fans. I remember when Bam Adebayo got drafted, I didn't know what to make of it because Hassan Whiteside had his best statistical season, but you also kind of knew. Like if you watched those teams,
and he had just gotten paid.
And he had just gotten paid. So put it this way, with Hassan Whiteside, he had his best statistical season, but the Heat drafted Bam Adebayo and signed Kelly Olynyk that summer. So there you go. But I remember Bam getting drafted, and my first reaction was, why would you do that? And they showed the highlights, and I was like, oh, okay, that's why you do that. So, but even still in college, he was not the guy. De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk were. Bam was just there to defend, run the floor, and catch lobs, right? And he came into the NBA as a guy who was just there to defend, run the floor, and catch lobs. In college, he didn't defend the same way he did early on in the NBA, though. So college, there was a lot of when you're 6'9", you can be like a regular big in college for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
He goes to the Miami Heat, hardly playing any minutes, and he has that play against Steph Curry that that never goes away on social media where he shuts Steph Curry down on that possession. And it's like, oh, okay. But he still takes a couple years, and now he's become this all around, he's playmaking a lot of times. He's guarding 1 through 5 legitimately, because that's something that gets overused also. Like he can guard 1 through 5, but it's really 1 through 3 a lot of times. Or 5 through 3 sometimes. Bam legitimately guards 1 through 5. He added a jumper over the years. He's shooting threes now. He's missed his last few, but I'm sure the percentage this season is still pretty decent. And it's just, again, giving credit to players coming into a league and not just accepting what their role is. He was here to defend and catch lobs, and now he's the team's anchor. Right? Jimmy Butler's the star, Bam's the anchor. Yeah,
and the captain.
Yeah.
To be very honest. But no, it's like you said, coming from, talked about obviously Devin Booker, you fast forward 2 years and they have one of the best recruiting classes. They get Malik Monk, they get De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, we're familiar with them. But in college, they were just as fucking good. Bam was literally just a roll big. He had no other responsibility. He was so much of a role big that season he broke Kentucky's single season record held by Anthony Davis for most dunks in a season. He beat it by 40 dunks. And, literally like a role player like that. He was basically what Clint Capella was just in.
That was the comparison when he came in the league.
Yeah. And obviously, through the years and more things that he's added and the player that he shaped himself to be it's crazy looking back and thinking of what, he was, but he was practically, if I'm being honest, he was like the fourth option because they also had Isaiah Briscoe, who, he had already been there for a year. So it was like he was a sophomore. And it was basically those three guys. And Bam was just viewed as a hustle guy, get it how you can. Comes into the league, honestly, plays the same role he did for about 2 years while Hassan was here. And then the team decided to correctly move on from Hassan Whiteside. And Bam, since then, hasn't looked back, been second team all defense 4 years in a row, 2-time All-Star, finished top 5 DPOY 4 years as well. Like, it's going to be 5 this year. And just hasn't looked back on that end of the floor. He's now starting to add a jumper up to 35.5%. Obviously, the volume isn't there from 3, but that's a pretty decent percentage, if I do say so myself. And just things that he literally was never asked to do in college. I remember scouting that draft in particular. That was the first draft that I really, really got into. Bam was 2 for 13 on jump shots in Kentucky. So he took 13 jump shots in a grand total of 38 college basketball games. And now we scream at him to stop taking so many jump shots and get to the rim sometimes. Like, it's crazy, like, to see how much, and he's still being efficient, as efficient. Maybe I'd like for him to be a little bit more, but it's just me being personal, but still impacting the game in every way. And I think no question, he's a star, a two-way star at the very minimum. We talked about giving guys credit for their defense. World-class defender. Yeah. World-class defender. There's like generally like no argument there. His offense is coming along. He's adding different things every year. I remember the year after the first year when Hassan left, they asked him, "Oh, what do you want to average?" And he said, "I'm gonna average 15, 10, and 5," and proceeded to average 16, 10, and 5. And like people were looking at him crazy when he said that because they're like, "Oh man, you haven't really shown.
You don't even play."
Yeah, like you haven't really played. And he was like, "No, I know I'm this good," and was one of the reasons that team made it to the finals that year. Just a truly crazy story. Because even at the time that he drafted him, he was a reach.
Yeah,
he was not projected. He was not projected to go top. I think the highest I saw him was like 17 or 18. That was my one source. Like typically he was late 20s throughout the entire draft process, but had a great workout in Miami. Miami has this thing where they just, they take their guys wherever they take them, and it panned out with Bam Adebayo, the anti-Hassan Whiteside.
And the Heat, sorry, Frankie, but the Heat just do that. Like, Dwayne Wade wasn't supposed to go top 5. Tyler Hero wasn't supposed to go 14th. Bam wasn't supposed to go when he went. Jaime Jr. could have gone later. They just know their guys. And the story with Bam Adebayo's workout, like basically cursing Pat Riley out for daring to ask him to guard guards, thinking he have a problem with it. It's just like, man,
got me fucked up.
Yeah, like it's a lot of it is credit to organizations also. Just with the Suns, with Earl Watson giving Devin Booker the reins and seeing that vision, with the Heat just being the Heat. It's just like knowing the types of players that work under their culture and being able to mold and guide them, even dating back to Dwayne Wade and assigning Eric Spoelstra to him to help him become who he became. Sometimes it's a lot on the organization also. So I want to obviously give credit to Bam, give credit to the Heat organization as well. But Frankie, I know you got stuff on Bam also.
Oh yeah, man. When like you said your draft night reaction, I was pissed.
Me too.
Because I thought that, I wasn't a Hassan fan, but I'm like, you've committed this money to him. Why are you taking his backup who you're not going to play with him together? OG Anunoby was one of my favorite players. He was available. Yep. I know he had injury questions, still does, but I thought he would have been perfect kind of fit for the team. But, I am more than pleased with Bam. I am so happy I was wrong. just a guy who's committed to working. And we talked about how difficult it can be in college, especially for like Kentucky teams. Like you look at his stats, Bam averaged 0.8 assists on that 0.8 assists on that team because he was asked, like you said, nothing to do but roll, and that's it.
And not even short roll.
Just
roll. No,
don't make any difference.
That's it. And this
your
guy,
decision is to catch it and dunk it. Just
exactly. He closed out teams with his passing. We saw last year in the first round against the Bucks in the fourth quarter, Jimmy Bam high post. He's finding cutters, finding DHOs, finding guys off screens. His passing is arguably his best offensive trait. I think it is.
Yeah.
But you know, guy who just improved year after year. His first year was legitimately just the exact same player out of college. Exciting dunks, but couldn't hit a layup, couldn't do anything. And then he started flat. He improved a little bit on his layups, a lot of bit on his layups. He improved his showcased his passing a lot more in the high post with the DHOs. And then just, you know, started getting his all around game. You know, he's still developing. We still have expectations from him and desires, but from what we got and what we expected, like he's been an absolute home run. 2 times, you know, you mentioned his accolades, also a gold medalist, starting on that team. And that's not something to frown at or to laugh about. Like that's a legitimate accomplishment. And he's probably going to be invited back to this year for the Olympics. So absolutely just deserved all his accolades, all his accomplishments and all his praise.
Yeah, and look, if anybody wants to scoff at the gold medal, I remember 2004. So
even that run, I think they lost to like Italy or Greece in the first game, and everybody was panicking.
Yeah, like so, gold medals are definitely nothing to scoff at. They're not a given, but just in general, I want to. Well, so you both scout for drafts. I will this year, obviously because we do this show. But I don't envy the people who get paid for it, or their jobs are on the line for it, because college is such a restrictive game. 1, and so, and 2, you want to win. Like the coaches get paid more if you want to win. If you win, you get more recognition. If you win, the players just started benefiting off winning also, at least with the NIL deals. And so, like I couldn't even fathom, especially being a player, like having all these skills and what I'm able to do and choosing this college. The transfer portal is not a thing yet. I'm not getting paid for this, and I can't showcase any of my skills because this is what's best for the team.
Right.
So a lot of these guys got lucky being able to get drafted into the NBA because some scouts were really good at what they did. But I don't envy those scouts because there are some decisions that get made a lot of times in drafts that are like the Heat drafting Precious Achiuwa over Tyrese Maxey
and Desmond Bain.
I didn't have much of an issue with that at first because they got Kyle Lowry out of it, but now I watch Tyrese Maxey play and I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
What were we doing?
Like, man, I just don't like. I wanted Justin Jackson in the Bam Adebayo draft. I wanted
goodness,
Booyah in the Tyler Hero draft. So
I wanted Sekou too.
So I don't envy the scouts whose jobs are on the line. It's not only just the travel, but man, it seems like an impossible job. It's tough.
And the praise is low because it's funny you said Justin Jackson. This is no shade to Justin Jackson. I was the last person I wanted us to get. The ideally, if I'm not gonna lie, I went to the actual arena for the draft, and I had the first top 10. I guessed it to a T. And when the guy wanted us to take, actually Utah traded up with Denver to 13 and took him right in front of us. And I audibly was the only person who yelled, but I said, man, fuck this shit. They got Donovan Mitchell. I'm not gonna say that was my first draft. I think I would have done pretty good if the Heat would have drafted Donovan Mitchell. But it's just like you said, it's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to take takeaways from, because sometimes, like you stated, not all of these coaches get the same leash that like Calipari gets, where he knows his bread and butter is he's not there to win. Like, sure, he can say he is. He's there to recruit, like straight pipeline to the NBA. He wants guys to go into the NBA so Kentucky can get a name. But not every coach is viewed like that. Not every program has that leash. So it's just, it's not an easy evaluation.
And then just the other side of it, the players just having to overcome, like, there are great players who get drafted into terrible situations.
Right.
Like
that could ruin your career.
Yeah. Now, granted, I don't think James Wiseman I don't think his style of play fits the NBA very much. But why would Golden State draft him knowing they play fast? You know what I mean? Like, he got a championship out of it, but, like, you're not going to develop like that. Now he's in Detroit behind a couple guys because he never really developed, right? When you look at and Darko didn't end up becoming anything anyway, but if you're the Detroit Pistons and you have Ben Wallace already, why are you drafting a big? You know what I mean? Like, it's just certain situations, and then the player gets blamed for it, but it's like, what are you supposed to do? So credit to the players who overcome that stuff. That's what this episode is for, because, man, it gets rough. Zach Lavine is an interesting case, right? Now, I didn't watch any college basketball that year, I don't think. So all I was really seeing was leading up to that draft and, like, workout videos. I had no idea who Zach Lavine was, but I saw his workout videos and I saw the vertical leap thing, and I was like, what is going on right now? This is crazy, crazy athlete. And I ended up digging into him, like, all right, he's a very good athlete. He can shoot, but he comes off the bench, can't do anything else. I don't know what's going on, but we'll see what happens. He ends up going to Minnesota, has a surprisingly good rookie year, great second year, and then we ended up seeing over the years what he ended up becoming. Chicago Bulls star. Now, and that's all due respect to DeMar DeRozan, great player also, but we see how that team looks without Zach. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, Zach is the star. Well, they're both stars. I'm not going to discredit DeMar, but obviously Zach Lavine is an incredible player, but came off the bench in college. So I'm gonna go to y'all again, just on Zach Lavine, because what I went and looked back on in his college time before he got drafted, I didn't see this coming.
No, I mean, a lot of people didn't. He was full on just a projection pick. I believe, if I remember correctly, he had a new coach, and the coach wasn't a fan of his, and I think he started like one game in college. But he was highly touted out of high school, supreme, like, elite athlete. You saw the vertical mixtape, but you also saw potential with the scoring punch. So it was just, and we talked earlier about, like, Devin Booker, Bam Adebayo, all these guys, late lottery picks. Like, these are just lottery tickets of potential. Like, they have tools. We hope, and we'll mold them. And Zach was one of those guys, and he's panned out. Obviously part of that Jimmy Butler trade to take him to Chicago, but he's been a multi-time All-Star. One of the funnest electric players in the game when he's healthy. And he's just been a sensational player. His rookie year, he averaged more points than he did in college. And, like, that's crazy for a guy who was a lottery pick. But, consistently just been one of the funnest, most electric players to watch. And he's definitely been a home run of a pick for where he was, what he was in college.
Yeah, and in college, it was like, he only started one game, obviously, for that UCLA team. That UCLA team was also very, very good.
Stacked.
They had, obviously, Kyle Anderson, who was the consensus third player out of high school, who back then put up like 15, 8, and 7. Like, in college with like 2 and 1, like, just an absolute menace. Obviously, but he wasn't playing the same position as him. But you ask, who was in his position? Well, Norman Powell,
who was a junior too, like upperclassman.
Exactly, and Jordan Adams, who was a sophomore that year, who obviously also got drafted into the NBA. Whether his career panned out or not, that doesn't really impact how good of a college player they were, because Jordan Adams was the leading scorer on that team.
Right.
So, and he was basically tasked to do a role very similar to what Devin Booker did. the difference was, obviously when he came into the league was almost like you guys said, he was a pure projection pick. I remember him coming out, people would comp him to like athletically, like, oh, he could be Russell Westbrook athletically, which is the craziest praise you can give somebody, especially during 2013.
Yeah.
Like Russell Westbrook was probably the most athletic player in the NBA, or if not top 3, because that was also Bron's peak. But just, what Lavine has shaped himself into. Obviously, it's tough that the injuries are kind of derailing his career. But even when he got to Chicago, man, he started getting better and better and better. Almost had a 50, 40, 90 year during that 2021 season. Just literally a sensational 3-level scorer for most of his career. Very impactful on the offensive end of the floor. Learned to pass the ball a little bit more. And one of the few players that has won a 3-point contest and a dunk contest in NBA history. So that just shows, obviously that doesn't show much. I mean, it shows a lot, but like not in a game, but you could just tell he's like that level of skill along with his athleticism. He's skilled enough to, go out there, shoot threes, obviously drive into the paint. Started again, tailing off a little bit now because of injuries. I'm curious to see if he's going to get a fresh start somewhere else. He's still only like 28, 29 years old.
Yeah.
So it's crazy because for a guy who got drafted 11, 10 years ago, like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he's still supremely talented. I'm curious to see where, because it sounds like him in Chicago sounds like a divorce, if I'm being honest. I'm curious to see where he ends up, and I hope somebody gives him a chance, and I hope he just hoops out, man, because Zach Lavine was a highlight reel. Like he was I remember during that time when he was actually, I have a cool story, because when he was actually in Minnesota, he was there like and during the time that he was there, one of my friends who like he just really likes high flyers, he would watch him and he'd be like, dude, I think this guy's gonna be sensational, because he's controlled chaos is the way he called it. Like he's just so ready to bounce, but he was very controlled with the way he does it. And just like, Frankie said, 13th pick, 14th pick, late lottery tickets, man. Giannis was a 15th pick. This is where you hit. These typically are franchise altering selections if you can hit correctly.
Yeah,
Kobe.
100%.
Yeah.
Kobe's the best whatever. But wherever Zach Lavine ends up, I do hope it's a really good team, and two, like a team that can be healthy, because just looking at the Chicago Bulls, it's just so unfortunate what injuries has done. When you look at the roster itself, right? When you look at DeMar and Zach, obviously, right? Lonzo Ball, who we said on previous episodes, he's the difference between where they are and them being, I don't want to say contender, but a very good team in the Eastern Conference, maybe a top 4 or 5 seed.
They were battling for the 1 seed.
They were the first seed.
They were. And then also with Alex Caruso. And Alex Caruso just gets no credit for probably being the best guard defender in the NBA.
Yep.
So it's just like, man, we as basketball, we're not Chicago Bulls fans, we might Heat fans, but as basketball fans, I feel like all of us, at least on this panel, at least kind of feel robbed by injury as far as what is done to Chicago Bulls.
For sure. Lonzo, man. Lonzo, just such a glue guy, just like the most impactful glue guy that's what is in the league right now. Just the way he gets everybody on his team going defensively and offensively. Man, he's a guy I wanted Miami to get. And I wasn't even like a humongous fan of his, but I was like, no, like that's exactly what they need. The defense, the versatility, the push, the guy who could get you out in transition, get you easy buckets. Like, man, I just want him to get healthy and get right.
He is exactly, if like, I'm not going to throw a player comp out there, but like what Drew Holiday, what is this year for the Celtics, that's what Lonzo Ball was for the Chicago Bulls team. Like he was just tasked to do all these little things, and he made everybody look better. Lavine's most efficient year ever was when Lonzo was literally like during his peak. So it's crazy. Injuries, they fucking suck. Lonzo get better.
Yeah. He's been working out. I don't know if he's playing with contact now, but he's been working out.
He'll be back next season, man. I just want him to look comfortable.
And I want Zach Lavine to still be there next season. The talks kind of died down when he got the surgery, so I don't know. But I hope he is there, man. I hope he is there. I want to see that team at least somewhat healthy because I feel like they are a very good team on paper and they just haven't had a chance to really show it. Congratulations to South Carolina. I'm not going to say the team name, but shout out to the women who won the championship today. Shut Caitlin Clark down in the second half, which I don't want to sound like that guy because Caitlin Clark is an incredible player, but South Carolina is year after year an incredible defense. And as great as Caitlin is, I just didn't think any one player was going to be able to overcome that.
Yep.
And so, man, credit to him just real quick. You know what I mean? Credit to Dawn Staley also. Obviously, we know about her WNBA career, her Olympic career, but being able to step in as a head coach and turn a program around and be dominant for years. They went undefeated this season, 38-0.
Yep.
So, man, huge credit to Dawn Staley first and foremost, more than anything. But just real quick, what y'all have on South Carolina women?
I mean, they lost all 5 of their starters last year from a Final Four team. And they turned it into a 38-0 national championship team. Credit to Iowa, of course, like you mentioned, Kenny. Caitlin Clark, phenomenal season, phenomenal college career, if this is it for her. But it wasn't just her. Gabby Marshall had a lot of to do with it on both ends. Hannah Stolke. I apologize if I say her.
I wanted to give her credit too. Yeah.
She's had a great tournament run. But unfortunately they just didn't have enough juice. They were playing against a juggernaut, man.
Yeah.
I credit to Dawn Staley because Iowa came. If you guys didn't get to watch the game, catch a replay of it, catch the highlights. It was a phenomenal game. Iowa punched South Carolina in the face right from the get-go. They were up big. I think they were up like 12, 15 points in the beginning, double digits for sure in the first quarter. It was looking like an upset early on, and Dawn did not call timeout. She did not look phased. She did not look rattled at all. Her team just played. She trusted her team. They just kept playing. They clawed back. Caitlin scored 18 in the first quarter, had 12 for the rest of the game. Really struggled getting a groove, getting going, and they mixed coverages on her. One of their best players had a rough. Raven Johnson had a rough scoring night. She was 1 up for 11 for the game, but defensively she was in her shit, and that was it was awesome to see, man. Just like I appreciate this season. We talked about Angel Reese a little bit. Camila Cardoso, Caitlin Clark,
sensational game for her.
Paige Beckers, like all that recruiting class, like just sensational. What they've done for women's basketball, and what a season! And I'm really excited to see these young women in the W.
Yeah, 100%, Lou.
Yeah, no, it was a great game. Tuning into it, expecting. Honestly, I was expecting South Carolina to win, but the way, like Frankie said, the way that Iowa came out and just literally punched them in the face 2-3 times. A lot of credit to South Carolina. You can tell where the depth was. They fully trusted 9 players in college basketball. That's not something you see in any level of college basketball. If I'm being very honest, typically you have 7 players, max maybe a 7.5. They had 9 players deep. They went 9 players deep, and it paid dividends. Camila Cardoso was an absolute menace down the stretch for that team on the second chances and just, helping put Iowa away. Great game from Caitlin. By the end, you can tell she was gassed, if I'm being honest.
For sure.
She had nothing left. Bunch of credit to her. And, the brand is definitely I said it last show, the marketing behind it is phenomenal, but the product is even better. So, yes, you're getting more eyes on it, but not only are eyes getting to it, they're staying on. So it's great for the W. It's great for basketball in general because from somebody who is fairly new to watching women's basketball, last year was the first time I really started digging into the W. I don't care if this sounds like a hot take. They play better basketball than the men. Being very honest. In terms of like
absolutely
fundamental, like just so beautiful.
The
it's
physicality,
like a coach's fucking dream, and it's just it's tough that a lot of prejudice and shit, but they're fighting through it, and it helps that they have people that they can push, and so many stars that are almost taking the lead and just taking the coverage back over, man. It's fucking great.
Yeah, and so I do want to get to this, and this wasn't even on the docket. This just came to mind just now, and we kind of have to talk about it. So one, the WNBA draft is in 1 week. It's a little ridiculous. Nobody had any time to prepare for it, but it's a foregone conclusion. Caitlin Clark is going number 1 to the Indiana Fever. There's been a lot of talk from WNBA veterans about how reality is going to hit her and she's not that good, and we're going to show her this and we're going to show her that. And there's been a lot of backlash towards those WNBA veterans. And look, they probably shouldn't be saying that stuff. But at the same time, you mentioned eyes being on the game and the game growing. That's going to add so much fuel to the fire, and people want to be invested in these games because Diana Taurasi, 41 years old or not, I'm not saying she's still Diana Taurasi, but she's still a very good player. She got to see Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark got to see her. And if you think people ain't going to tune into that, you are sadly mistaken. And so I want to get y'all's thoughts on all the talk back and forth. Well, not even back and forth. Caitlin hasn't said anything to anybody, but just kind of getting into what these players have been saying about her and how dismissive they've been and how y'all think she's going to end up responding to it.
Well, I think what like a lot, I won't say all of the vets because there's going to be some natural just jealousy and resentment there, and I can't speak for their emotions, but what I have heard from some vets and that I've seen is just that I think a lot of people are just discounting how the leap from from college to the W that I don't think there's
players who get cut.
There's only like 12 teams available right now, and there's players who were drafted 5th overall in the top 5 the year before that cut after 1 year. Like it's a dogfight. Kelsey Plum, who was previously the all-time leading scorer in the women's side, she was the number 1 pick. She took a few years to shed the bust label. Like she just recently started living up to her potential last year after 4 or 5 years in the W. She didn't get until her 4th season. She didn't average double figures.
Yep.
That it's harder. It's more physical. She even like hosts Kelsey Plum even hosts a camp for rookies and young players to like understand what the development and the leap and stuff that you weren't expecting is going to take in the W, because this is the premium of the premium. This is the cream of the crop in the W. Like, there's a lot of great and talented young ladies who aren't good enough to play in the W. And it's just because there's not enough players, not enough teams. And, as we've talked previously, like it's still in the very young stages of the W. It's not even 30. I think it's like 30 years right now or something like that.
It started in 97. So we're not even 30.
We're not even 30 years into it. We've got NBA players that are older than the W, just to show you. But that's going, it's going to keep expanding. We've seen a lot of it. And that's where most of them are trying to get to, that there's a leap to it. There's going to be an adjustment. A lot of players don't just go in and start getting their shit together. I think Caitlin's going to be very good. I think her talent and her skill set's going to look very nicely with more talent around her. But I definitely think there will be some ups and downs and some adjustment for her.
Yeah, it's so it's not going to be an easy transition for anybody, right? She has a shooting and a passing and all that stuff. I do think she's going to be a good WNBA player
for sure.
And I'm not putting I don't say good as in like that's her ceiling. I don't know what anybody's ceiling is going to be. She could end up being this incredible player in the W also. But I do want to kind of point out just in general, because you are right, the players aren't just all jealous. There is a huge gap between college and the WNBA. There's also something to be said about players who have been doing this for a while. They are competitive, right?
Yep.
And I think that's where the misconception is. Even when like Shaq will say something about a young NBA player and they'll be like, oh, he's jealous. He's Shaq. Why does he have to be jealous? No, like these people are just competitive. Like it's just because, and this doesn't tie into the WNBA players, that's in the league, but just because a player's body doesn't allow them to play at a high level anymore, that competitive mentality is still the same. And so if you say this player today will bust this player from back then fast, the player from back then is gonna be like, nah, hold up, I think you might be tripping. Like if I could still play the way I could, if I could like me back then, no chance. Like their mentality doesn't go away. And so with these WNBA players, they're seeing, and us younger people, well, I'm 31, like I'm young in a sense, but I'm not in my early 20s. I'm not exactly the demographic I'm talking about, but I'm new to the women's game. So I'm going to include myself in this. We have to stop just crowning the first people we see and undermining and overlooking the people who have been there. I think that's where all this stuff
100%.
is rooted, right? And we saw it happen with LeBron, and it's not LeBron's fault. It's not LeBron fans' fault. But when you say LeBron's the greatest of all time and you've never seen Jordan, people who have seen Jordan are going to be like, hey, hold on, not so fast. And now there's this argument, and now it's just poison sports in general. And again, that topic is banned on this show. It's never going to happen. But I don't want to see that same thing happen with women's basketball. We're at a stage now where it's just now growing. And it's already pretty toxic and bad. There's people still harassing Angel Reese. It's dumb. But there is something to be said about respecting the game, right? And so you like just use a different word. Don't say greatest of all time if it's the only person you've seen. Just say Caitlin Clark's the best women's player I've seen, but I didn't grow up watching Lisa Leslie. I wasn't watching every Candace Parker game. I saw the highlights, I saw the stats. She won MVP and Rookie of the Year same year. That's incredible. I'm going to go back and do the research and watch the games. So by the time next season starts, I'm a little more educated, but I'm not going to just crown and undermine the players who have been there, the Sylvia Fowles, the Teresa Weatherspoons, all these people, right? I'm not going to just overlook and undermine those people because they've been there, they put the work in, and putting the work in is tough enough, but doing that and getting no credit, I can only imagine how that must feel, right? So then you have this new person in, and credit to Caitlin Clark, she did a lot for the women's game as far as growing it and getting the eyes on it. But you don't just jump straight to crowning that person because you didn't see the people before. It's about seeing the people before and understanding how the people who influenced Caitlin Clark.
Right.
Seeing the people who paved the way for her, because there are a lot of these players, there would be no WNBA for Caitlin Clark to go to if there wasn't Elisa Leslie, if there wasn't a Dawn Staley, if there wasn't these players just keeping this thing afloat. You know what I mean? Candace Parker specifically, she was incredible in college. And I remember the hype surrounding her. I was just the idiot who didn't start watching at the time. But we just got to be more respectful to the game in general, man. Like, and I've said this on the NBA side, but I've been watching NBA basketball since I was 10 years old, 2002. Me being new to the WNBA and new to college women's sports, I have the same viewpoint on it. We can't disrespect the people who came before the era that we got into it and before the era that these players played in. We just can't do it. And we rob ourselves of greatness, first of all, because again, like there's people right now. I haven't looked at my phone this whole time, but I'm pretty sure somebody somewhere is typing out, well, Jordan wasn't really. I saw some bullshit today about Joel Embiid is the most skilled big of all time. Hakeem
Yeah,
do this. And
I
it's
saw
just
that.
like, did you ever fucking see Hakeem?
Have you watched
It's like you're robbing yourself, because if, like me personally, when I first saw what Hakeem did to David Robinson in that game, David Robinson is one of the best bigs of all time. It's just, you rob yourself as a fan and you disrespect the game when you do that. And so I say all that to say, the players in the league, they may seem bitter and they may seem like haters, but they're just ultra competitive. You don't get to where they are without being competitive, and they have been getting disrespected this whole time at the same time.
Exactly.
And if they are jealous, well, if you've been doing this for 10, 15 years and nobody's giving you any credit, and then this new girl comes about and all of a sudden she's the greatest of all time, quote unquote, and she hasn't played a second in the league you've been in and doing all the dirty work for and doing all this groundwork for, I can't get mad at you if you are jealous.
Exactly.
And so, I don't know, man.
Maya Moore's my GOAT. That's the bottom line.
I need to go back and watch her, because everybody says that, and I'm not going to discredit. I need to go back and watch Maya Moore, and I'm going to go and do that sometime this week. Because I remember hearing her name and seeing the numbers and seeing the highlights. I need to go do an extensive watch on Maya Moore, and I'm committed to doing that. And I feel like that's the way it should go, man.
Yeah, you know, my before Lou, real quick before you go, Maya Moore, I used to like hate this little thing, but when an NBA player would wear 2 arm sleeves, I think Ray Allen was the first that I remember doing it, but I hated it. I couldn't. Dwight too. Dwight did it. There's a bunch of
Dwight wore way too much stuff though.
Yeah, Dwight wore like a shirt,
king accessory,
like sleeves, like wear a fucking swimsuit, bro. Come on, but Maya Moore was the first one to do it. I'm like, she looks cool doing it. she's too cool to like judge her in any way. She's the GOAT. She's my GOAT. Go ahead, Lou.
No, I think it's cool to see. You know, I think it's two sides to every. There's a good and the bad. I think the good with, you know, the veterans of the W talking down on Caitlin is it adds more eyes to the product. Mm-hmm. Now, the bad, obviously, you don't know where those eyes are, what view they're looking at, and whatever.
It's been so racist behind her, and I know she hates it.
But more eyes on the product is always good. I love the way that Caitlin carries herself, because she doesn't do much talking. She does the talking on the court with her play, that is. But, like, you know, I hope she pans out for the W, man. Like, I would love nothing more than for the people who are now getting introduced to have somebody that they can hold on to and watch that person also pan out in the professional scene. Like obviously like in the ultra, like, you know, college is professional, but I'm talking about like the ultra professional, like obviously the W. That would be great for the sport, man. You know, she doesn't have to be the biggest star or whatever, but just her working out and getting more eyes on it, you know, maybe helps people realize, yeah, maybe she isn't the best, and that's okay. Maybe Asia is the best right now. Like,
maybe,
because I'm saying it, but it is what it is. Like, you know, shit like that is cool, because people come into it and, you know, they follow one player, but you never know exactly where that's going to lead you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everybody has a player who introduced them to the sport. For me, it was Allen Iverson. Who was y'all's players? This is not the topic. Just real quick. Who was y'all's players to introduce y'all to basketball?
Dwayne was the one who made me fall in love with basketball.
Dwayne introduced me to it. Steve Nash made me fall in love.
Yeah, so Caitlin Clark is going to be that for a lot of people also. So I know I said a lot in defense of the veterans. I also do want to defend the younger people, and Caitlin also. Just everybody has to get introduced to the game by somebody, right? And so I understand that, but just be respectful in the process. I didn't come in like Allen Iverson. I only watched 1 year before Dwayne Wade got drafted, and I was a Heat fan by default because I'm from Miami. I got hometown pride, but I wasn't coming into this like, well, AI is better than Jordan. AI is better than him and Kobe was the same year, but AI is better than Dominique Wilkins. He's better than Larry Bird, Mary Johnson. Like, I wasn't doing all that, and you don't have to do that. And what it does, it just makes people dismiss you. And I know like people thrive off the arguments and all that stuff, but it's not the way to go. Just don't do it. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Playoff Foul. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and all that. I'm Kenny. Social media, Kenny Spence NBA. But again, I don't care if you follow me on there. Subscribe to Playoff Hour wherever you get podcasts. Frankie, where can they find you?
Frankie G _ on Twitter. That's Frankie with a Y, G _.
And Lou?
At Saucy Takes, like it is up there.
You never turned on the sign so you can see it.
Yeah, I didn't turn on the sign today. The Heat didn't win, so the sign stays off. But at Saucy Takes, no spaces, obviously, with a Z at the end.
And if you like the music throughout, that's my brother Devin Spence. His Instagram is Black Glow Music. Follow him. Listen to his EPs, and we'll see y'all next time.